Hello everyone, good afternoon. Hopefully you can hear and see me okay. Thank you for joining this Your Overseas Home webinar. My name's Seb Bampton. I'm one of the account managers here at Your Overseas Home. Today we're going to be chatting with Danny Cook from Smart Currency Exchange, and the discussion will be all around your currency exchange requirements and essentials when buying property and moving funds overseas. I, on a personal level, have worked with Danny for a number of years now, so I'm very grateful for him to spend some of his time today to join us and also to speak to you and answer some of your questions. But also it's great to have so many of you here as well, listening in and hearing about how Smart Currency and Danny can assist you on your journeys and requirements for foreign exchange. Once Danny shared his presentation, we'll then open up the floor to questions. So if you do have any questions, on the right-hand side of your screen, there's a question tab. Please feel free to type in as many questions that you'd like within that tab. Try and challenge Danny. I know he likes challenge, so try and challenge him with any difficult requirements you may have. And we'll try and get around to answering as many of them today throughout this session as we can. If not, we will be passing over your details to Danny and the Smart Currency team to follow up with you after this session. So before we get going, Danny, we've only got about 30 minutes, so I don't want to spend too long me talking. I'll pass it over to you now. Danny, if you could just go, I suppose, a quick introduction to yourself, Smart Currency, and then we can move into the questions after your presentation. So yeah, Danny, over to you.
Yeah, absolutely perfect. Thanks, Seb. Let's get into it. So yeah, first slide. I mean, very simple question here, really, to everyone watching. There might be some gamblers amongst you, but the question really is, would you walk into a casino with £25,000 of your savings and put them on red or black? So the reality is, when buying an overseas property at a price of €250,000, your currency risk is upwards of £25,000. So my name's Danny Cook. I work on the account management team here at Smart Currency Exchange. Thank you very much all for your time this afternoon. Over the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to help you understand the risk that you're exposed to when buying property overseas and how we can help you understand and manage your next steps. Just a bit of a background about Smart. We've been around since 2004. We've helped around 50,000 people in that time move currency overseas for property purchases or relocations. I myself have worked here for 5 years now as an account manager, and most of my clients are people like yourselves who are looking to buy property overseas and therefore needing help in the future with a large currency conversion to facilitate that. We're the exclusive currency partners of Rightmove and Your Overseas Home, of course, and also work closely with a multitude of estate agents and solicitors, etc., to help people secure their dream property overseas. So why do exchange rates move then? So the currency rates are, of course, the most frequently traded on the planet, with an estimated $8 trillion transacted daily. So they're moving every second of every single day. Now, of course, when buying a property overseas, this creates quite a large degree of risk that you can really be exposed to in that process. So they are affected by a myriad of direct and indirect economic and political factors, far beyond simply interest rates. So, a lot of things impacting these markets on a day-by-day basis. Market sentiment plays a huge role. They are highly unpredictable. So, it's a lot different to buying a property here in the UK, where, the cost of the property to you is not going to change from day one. Again, when buying a property overseas, exchange rates constantly changing, and this basically means that your cost of property to you in pounds can also constantly changing. It makes budgeting very, very difficult, particularly as we'll go on to discuss from the point of when you have an offer accepted. That can really create a lot of challenges because you just don't know where the exchange rate's moving from one second to the next. So, this is really what we want to be there to assist our clients with, and that's what we've been doing for around 20 years now. So here are just some of the influences we can see from the last 18 months. So you've got a lot of political changes happening with the premierships of Sunak, obviously at the moment, Johnson beforehand. You've got that Chancellor's Hunt, Liz Truss, the disaster with Kwasi Kwarteng that I'm sure a lot of people remember. At the end of 2022, we saw the pound at some of its lowest positions for decades when that happened. The cost of living crisis, of course, still ongoing. We had inflation soaring. It's of course now started to come down slightly with interest rates being cut. But all these changes have such an impact on the on the exchange rate. The Ukraine war, of course, a lot of risk attached to that in the markets, particularly with the dollar. Gaza conflict as well. So many things going on in the world, politically, economically, that have a bearing on what's happening in the markets. And again, that does really pose a lot of challenges when buying a home abroad, and really is something that you have to be considering as a very important part of the process. People often think, that currency has to be left until the last minute, but we actually advocate for getting in touch with us as early as possible, and just really making sure that you know exactly what you're doing when it comes to this part of the process, because ultimately you want to have that security and knowledge of what you're doing with your finances there. So here's just basically an example of a chart from last year. Basically, now you might actually argue that last year was a potentially sort of lower volatility year. I mean, on average, we actually see the exchange rate move 10% on a yearly basis. So 5% difference between the highest and lowest rates isn't quite as much as we might see historically. But having said that, that still can create a huge amount of problems, even just that small change in the rate on a large transaction, as you are looking at when you buy a property overseas. Even on 100 grand, that's £5,000. I mean, I know personally I personally would be quite frustrated, if I lost £5,000 just due to an exchange rate change, or if something became that more expensive. So again, even just a small change in the rate we can see here is going to have a big impact when buying a property overseas for a large sum of money. So how does currency risk actually arise with overseas property? So of course, the very, very early stages, as you can see here, is your research stage, your viewing trip stage. Now, you might not necessarily be exposed to currency risk at these stages, but you still want to be very, very well aware of what the risks are. The stage really where the currency risk comes into play is, of course, from the moment of offer accepted. So that is really where you want to be considering your options and potentially how to protect yourself from this risk. So again, when buying a property in the UK, when you have an offer accepted, the cost of the property in pounds is not going to change from that moment forwards. However, when buying in Spain, France, Portugal, wherever it is, not going to be the case, as the offer is accepted in euros. However, you will currently be holding pounds. So again, cost of the property to you in pounds is then totally reliant on where the exchange rate moves. Again, as you can see here, from offer accepted to completion, you can be looking at a 3 to 9 month period, up to 9 months, if it's a new build or something like that. And again, during this time, currency rates constantly moving, therefore the property cost in pounds to you is also constantly moving. And again, if this exchange rate moves 5-10% in that period of time, which it can do on average 3 month period, you're looking at 5 to 10% worth of movement. The property can again increase in cost to you on the sterling side. So I think the example here is an offer again being accepted at €250,000, which would be in this example £220,000. You come completion, if the exchange rate has dropped, the cost to you has now increased by £25,000. So again, large sum of money. Some people might think, we might not drop that much. And again, we have seen periods where in that space of time, the rate has moved that substantially. So you never really know what's around the corner with these markets. They are notoriously highly unpredictable. They have been fairly flat in the early part of this year, but again, you really do never know what's coming up next. We've got, potential elections this year. Who knows how markets are going to react to that? You've got things that can come out of left field again. To hark back to that Liz Truss budget of late 2022, no one really saw that coming. There were some impactful parts of that policy, of course, but no one would have really forecast that we were going to see such a massive plummet in the exchange rate off the back of that. So, again, really got to highlight that unpredictable nature that these markets do bring to the process when you're looking at doing something like this. So what can you actually do about it then? So the main I suppose the most popular product that we have and that my clients utilize is a forward contract. So a forward contract allows you to agree an exchange rate today for delivery in the future. This means that you can agree that sterling price of your property when your offer is accepted. So this means then that your rate is not going to move between your accepted offer and completion date, irrespective of the volatile currency markets. So it removes any gamble, it gives you absolute certainty and allows you to focus on the property purchase process, which is of course complex enough in and of itself. You've got a lot of things to deal with, dealing with the lawyers and the counterparty. All that stuff takes a lot of time, effort, and energy. Having to then consider what currency rate you're looking at and potentially, worrying about it dropping down is often just another thing to add to the list of things you have to deal with, basically. So the forward contract, is a very sort of popular product that we have here. And again, most of my clients end up going down this route. You may get the odd client who prefer to sort of have that gamble with the rates, and that's fine. We can help you with that as well. But this is the main way that my clients tend to go about things. Now, let's just scenario set again here. So in March, Debbie and Richard have found their dream villa for €300,000 on the Costa Blanca. They pay that small reservation deposit to take it off the market. At this stage, the cost of the property is 247,933 in sterling. Come September, completion day arrives, the balance is due. And again, property costs can increase substantially. So in not using a forward contract, maybe deciding to actually just leave it and go on what we would call a spot contract there. They had no idea what the rate was going to be on the day to completion, and the property ended up costing them an extra £21,000 just from not using a forward contract and deciding to sit back and relax. So why gamble? What do you sort of gain in doing that? It's something that could end up meaning that you can't afford the property if you decide to not actually lock an exchange rate in. So here are the main 5 reasons to use a foreign exchange specialist for your property purchase. So the main one that I think we've sort of covered there is understanding currency risk. So again, that time between offer acceptance and completion is crucial, and it represents a massive risk when buying a property. So we will, of course, help you understand that risk so you can make an informed decision on how to handle it. Step 2 is to get a currency plan agreed. So before you go on your viewing trip, you want to agree your currency plan, ensure you have a trusted expert who's dealt with thousands of property transactions to help you understand your budget in both currencies that you're looking at. And then once you find your property, you just execute that plan. And again, you can focus on the rest of the process. Forward contract, which again we touched on, you can lock in today's exchange rate for delivery in the future and remove the risk. And again, as a personal customer, your high street bank wouldn't actually provide that product. So a forward contract is simply something you can't do through a bank. And then ongoing transfers, we're here to help for the lifetime. So any living costs, renovations, anything like that, we're really here to help with everything rather than just, the main one for the property purchase. We help everyone for that lifetime of overseas property purchase ownership. And of course, a regular payment plan. So again, that's similar to the one above. If you're sending the same amount each month for living costs, pension payments, anything like that, we'll simply automate that process for you and hopefully make it, as easy as possible. And here's just a bit more about us, really, some quick facts. So yeah, been around since 2004, 20 years, over £12 billion transferred, 45,000 clients helped, 600,000 transactions. We are rated excellent on Trustpilot, so do head across to our Trustpilot page and check out our reviews on there. We do pride ourselves on our customer service, so you get that premium account manager service with us, as well as highly competitive exchange rates and all the different products that we can offer. And we have a UK-based team. Our head office is in London. We do have a couple of offices in Spain as well. So again, just to outline the process in brief, speak to us early, get in touch. We're all very friendly and happy to speak to everyone at all stages of the journey. I can assure you of that. And find your dream property, of course, is what everyone's here to do. Offer accepted. Execute your currency plan, secure exchange rate, don't gamble and leave it to the last minute. And then completion day, you can then enjoy your new home. So I think we timed that pretty well, about 15 minutes. We got 15 minutes for Q&A, but there's a QR code on there if anyone wants to get in touch, and our email addresses as well.
Brilliant. Danny, thank you so much. We've got loads of questions coming as well. So thank you everyone for the questions. We'll try and get around to answering as many of them as possible. Myself and Danny have been working in and helping buyers move overseas and purchase property for probably 5 years each now. So quite a while. And one of the things that I always found was, before I knew the buying process and what the risks are involved, is that there's so much to think about when you are looking to buy property overseas, and it can be a bit of a minefield of, where to start first. I think the normal thought process is find a property first. So I think hopefully, and the presentation here focusing on the fact that finding property is very, very important, of course, but the steps before you actually find that property are just as important when you're talking about, your life savings or hundreds of thousands of pounds, and where slight movements in the markets can have, huge impacts on how much that dream property is going to cost you. So why not speak to an expert or speak to someone that can help you understand your budget and the risks to your budget while you're searching for that property and actually then completing that property. So yeah, thanks, Danny, for your help and all your expertise with all the buyers that you've helped to date, but also people listening on this call, sharing your knowledge of that presentation. So yeah, without further ado, so I don't want to take up too much time with me talking away. We've got some questions here, Danny. So I'll just go through them one by one. And we'll try and get through to as many of them as possible. Antonio asked here, I think it was in relation to slide 6, Danny. He just wants to know what the exchange rate on the completion was for that example. Do you remember? Do you have that sort of information to hand? If not, Antonio,
yeah, I can do a quick calculation.
While you're doing that, I'll look through the other questions.
Yeah,
come back to you, Antonio. So there's one also here from Richard saying, is it worth opening a euro account to convert the monies in advance when the rate is fairly positive, like in a holding account for pre-purchase?
Say that one again, sorry.
So Richard asks, is it worth opening a euro account and converting the monies, let's say the sterling to euros, exchanging his sterling into euros in advance when the rate is fairly positive, and then holding it in that account until he finds the right property and ultimately purchases it?
Yeah, it's definitely something you can look at doing. I mean, depend if you can get a euro account set up beforehand. It will often depend where you're buying. I think some countries you have to actually have a registered address before you can set up a euro account. So, it depends on that situation. I mean, quite often we actually send the euros straight to the solicitor account for any purchase. So that's sort of what's happening in most cases. But it's certainly something you can look at doing if you decide you want to just get your money exchanged into euros beforehand, and then you've got liquid euros there. Then it is certainly something you can do. Just to go back to that first question, I believe that was based off 102. So that is obviously a very low exchange rate, but we have seen sterling euro, as low as 105 in recent times. So not far off, real life examples there.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Danny, and thanks, Antonio, for your question. Richard, just as well, on that note, I know Danny in his presentation mentioned, forward contract. As far as I'm aware, and Danny, correct me if I'm wrong, that, a forward contract, effectively you can lock in a rate at a favourable time within that market while you're searching for a property. You then pay I think, is it a 5 or 10% deposit, Danny, depending on how much you're looking to secure? Yeah,
between 5 and 10% generally for a forward contract. Yeah.
So then, you lock in that rate for a period of up to, I think, 24 months, Danny, I think it is.
Yeah, up to 24 months, but we would generally have your value date actually married up to your time frames wherever you're buying. So say if you had an offer accepted today and your completion was end of July, we would normally marry those dates up in terms of the forward contract value date.
Yeah, of course, if you're searching, I suppose you wouldn't necessarily know when you're going to be looking to complete, but you may have a date in mind or a month in mind. But yeah, I suppose the forward contract would, in a way, would work as well as purchasing the euros today if the market was.
It's a similar type of process. Although with the forward contract, as you say, it's just that deposit you pay up front, so you're not having to send all the sterling to complete the purchase of your euros.
Yeah,
sometimes known as sort of a buy now pay later scheme, in that you're buying the euros in full, but you're sort of paying for them later almost.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thanks a lot for your question, Richard. And just on the back of that question, and we'll move on to the next one. I think we also get a lot of questions at your overseas home around, how do we know that the funds are going to be safe once they send them to you? So do you mind just giving a bit more insight, Danny, into how the client's funds are protected when they are transferring monies across into different countries with smart currency exchange?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're fully authorized by the Financial Conduct Authority. So what that entails is the use of segregated client accounts. So when you actually make a transaction with us, your funds are held in accounts that are totally separate from our operating accounts. So you do receive full 100% insurance on those funds, but by the FCA. Excuse me. Have to cough a sec.
You and I both, Danny. Colds.
Yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, the funds are held in fully segregated accounts that are totally separate from our actual operating accounts. So that's the main way they're protected. Full 100% insurance on those funds as well.
Okay, perfect. Thanks a lot. And a question that's come up here from a couple of our viewers is around the cost of the service. Obviously, rightly so, they want to know how much things are going to cost them, and nothing's for free. So can you give any insight, Danny, into what kind of costs this could actually have for people listening in?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of cost to yourselves as the client, it's all built into the exchange rate. So essentially, what you'll see is when you look online, those unfortunately aren't the rates that you or I will receive. They're sort of where the market's actually trading at. We would offer clients a rate that's slightly below that exchange rate, and then the difference between the two rates, between where we buy and sell at, that's where we actually make our money as a business. So it's important to know that when you're looking online and Googling exchange rates, that it's not quite the rate you'll get as an individual, but you'll be a lot closer to that rate than what you'd get through, say, a high street bank.
Yeah. So there's no sort of hidden costs or commission attached to it that people are going to be stung with at the end of their exchange.
Yeah, exactly. It's all, as I say, it's all built into the rate. There's no hidden fee. There's no secret charges or anything like that. It's all it's simply in that exchange rate differential is where we actually make money as a business, basically.
Yeah. So in the buying and selling of the currency. Yeah.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Tom's asked here, it's quite specific. Sorry, from US dollar to euro. Does Smart Currency deal with US dollar into euros, Danny?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had a client just earlier today who was booking a dollar to euro transaction. So that is certainly something we can assist with, and we do that on a regular basis. So yeah, definitely can help with that as well.
Okay. I suppose on that one as well, if there's any other questions here, I'm trying to get through as many of them as possible, but are there any, do you work with most of the major currencies? Can you assist with?
Yeah, most major currencies, a suite of minor currencies as well. So yeah, any requirement, that's not sterling, euro, still get in touch, and we'll make, we'll see if we can help. As I say, any major currency we can definitely help with.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think, as I said, we've been working with one another for a number of years now. I think every buyer or client that we've had, you've been able to assist with so far. So yeah, really useful for anyone here that is overseas or living in other countries outside of the UK and have unique requirements. A question here from Richard around forward contracts. Richard asked, could he cancel a forward contract once it's booked in? And if so, would there be a cost, and what kind of costs are involved within that cancellation?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question. Of course, one I get from clients a lot when they're at the stage of actually, potentially booking a forward contract. It's important to say, generally, most of my clients will book a forward contract at the stage that they've had an offer accepted. So in most countries, you pay a deposit or not. So cancellations are very, very rare, but they do happen. If worse comes to worse and you have to cancel your forward contract, what involves us doing is selling back the euros onto the market, the pre-purchased euros. So it's all then dependent on the rate at the time of the sell back as to whether you get your whole deposit back plus a bit extra, or whether there's a potential loss to be taken out of the deposit. So again, dependent on the right rate at the time of the sell back, but ultimately, again, I've been doing this about 5 years, only cancelled, I could probably count, on one hand the amount of forward contracts I've cancelled. So they are rare, because generally, we're making sure that you're booking them sort of at the right time. It is a firm commitment to buy currency. So normally, again, they're booked at the point of offer accepted, when you are essentially tied into buying that property over in France, Spain, Italy, wherever it is, and you need to have that protection on your currency risk. And again, you can always discuss these things with your personal trader and make sure you're aware of the mechanics in great detail. If you do get to the point where you're considering locking in one of those forward contracts.
Perfect. Just while we're on the topic of forward contracts, Janet asks here, if you lock in a rate and the rate then drops, who takes the loss on that rate drop? I know the answer to this, Danny, but just to add a bit more clarity to how a forward contract works for the people listening in, can you just kind of explain why there wouldn't be any loss involved to any of the parties?
Yeah, I mean, I think we sort of covered it just then, but essentially, it's yeah, it's to do with the rate at the time of the sell, because to whether there's a loss or a gain. So again, it'd be something you discuss with your personal trader as to what was going to be the situation with any deposit, in terms of a loss to be taken out or a gain to be had. So yeah, again, it's all dependent on the rate at the time of the sell, which we of course don't control.
Yeah, the question, Danny, is so Janet's asking, if you lock in a rate on a forward contract today, the rate then drops in 6 months' time. I think Janet's asking, is there a loss to anyone involved if the rate does drop? The answer is no, because you buy the currency today when the forward contract's booked.
Yeah, exactly. The rate, where the rate moves thereafter is not really impactful, right? Because essentially you've locked into that rate. So if the rate then drops, you've still got your guaranteed exchange rate that you've locked in the forward contract. So essentially, if that were to happen, you'd of course be in a very, very strong position, because you'd have had a pre-agreed rate that is now a lot higher than where the actual market is trading at.
Yeah, because as far as I'm aware, and so Danny, jump in here if I'm not talking sense, that you'll buy the currency on their behalf in its entirety today when the forward contract's booked in. They'll pay a deposit, and when the time comes when they need the funds, they'll pay the remainder of that contract, and then you release the funds. So if the market moves, it has no effect to Smart Currency or to Janet.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. And a question, a couple, I've just lost it because there's a few coming through, was around forecasts for euro and sterling rates over the next 6-month period. I know you started this webinar around gambling and around putting a risk attached to currency exchange. Can you give any insight, Danny, into what the forecast is for the next short term to 0 to 6 months for sterling euro?
Yeah, I mean, look, unfortunately, if I knew where the rate was going, I probably wouldn't be speaking to you here, Seb. I'd be away on a beach somewhere with a big cocktail in my hand. But unfortunately, that's not the case. But you can try and read forecasts. I mean, again, the reality is no one really knows. You look at one major bank, they'll tell you, 119, another one will tell you 114. So it's very, very hard to forecast where rates are going. I think we kind of highlight that in our quarterly forecast that we produce as well, which I was actually just reading earlier. So if anyone listening to this gets a chance to download that, I do recommend you doing that, just because it really shows the variation in what the major banks forecast on the pounds euro rate, and the fact that no one's really got a Scoobies, if they're being honest with you. So that's why we really advocate for that risk management side of things. You can try and forecast rates if you want to, but do that at your own peril, really, because you might sit there and think, yeah, it's going to go up, and then if the opposite happens, you can find yourself in a tough position. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think they say the more time you have, the better when it comes down to anything within buying property overseas. Just to understand your options, understand the potential risks, and actually connect with the experts that can help guide you through that process. A question here is around, I suppose, transparency. Dealing with thousands of pounds of people's either property sales or savings or whatever it may be, to then buy a property overseas or reinvest it overseas. When you are booking contracts for exchanges, Danny, what can the buyers or the listeners here, will they have transparency of what rate they're getting, or how much things are going to cost them? How does it all work when you're actually looking to book in a contract?
Yeah, so basically you would be assigned a personal account manager. So I think I touched on it in the presentation that, you get that personal account manager, you're getting a premium account manager service with us. So you'll be assigned an account manager who you would normally have, a few conversations with before actually getting to the point of maybe agreeing an exchange rate. They will quote you a live rate on the phone that is net to you. There's no fees or charges included in the rate. If you confirm you're happy with the rate, the transaction gets booked. So essentially, your account manager can actually not book an exchange rate without you confirming that you're happy with it. So it's it's a very transparent service in that sense, and it's always up to the client if they are happy with their exchange rate, basically. So we like to be as transparent as possible with that.
Yeah, I think you suppose you have to be, but I can imagine you probably get a lot of people calling in last minute and looking to compare, on the day of the exchange, the with other brokers or other providers for the best rate on that day. I know from my own experience and knowledge of working within this sort of area or industry for the last 5 years, if you're leaving at that last minute to compare on the day of your exchange, really you haven't given yourself enough time to monitor the markets, to find a good option to protect yourself and to ensure that you are getting a good rate over a 6-month period instead of the best rate on a day. And that's obviously where you guys come in and can help them. So yeah, I know we've gone over our allocated amount of time. There's a couple more questions in here, Danny, which we'll try and get through. I know there's quite a few questions in here that are quite unique to your individual requirements. So I think what will be best is if I send them across to Danny and his team after this, he'll then be able to follow up with you on a case-by-case basis and give you answers to your questions, because some of them will take a little bit more than just a one question and one answer sort of scenario. One here from Karen's just come through is I've sold in the UK, sold a property here in the UK, money's in the bank, searching for a home over in France. When should Karen open up a forward contract?
So, I mean, look, it's ultimately up to you, isn't it, Karen? It's always going to be your decision. But I would say, that the time you definitely want to consider is when you go and get an offer accepted. Having said that, I have had clients in the past where they might see an exchange rate where they think, actually, I really like the look of this. I feel that the rate might drop down. I'm going to decide to actually forward book my rate now, and then I'll know exactly what my pounds are worth in euros, and I can then proceed with my search in France, knowing that this is my budget. So ultimately everyone's different, right? Some people might want to be thinking, actually, I'll just wait until I have my offer accepted and then I'll get my rate locked in. But, other people might think, actually, again, really like where the rate is at the moment, let's get it locked in, or coercively might be, concerned by downside risk. I think at the moment, I've actually had a couple of clients do that recently, where we're in a top sort of 1 percentile range of rates achievable over the past 18 months, really. So going back to sort of late 2022. So I've had clients who have actually been getting their rates locked in on forward contracts who might have been in similar positions to yours there, Karen, where they think, bit concerned by downside risk, rates in a good position, just want to get it secured, and then I'll know what I've got to spend in France, and I'll just get a forward contract locked in now rather than waiting till I actually have an offer accepted. So you've got a couple of different options to weigh up there. You can wait until you've got that certain requirement for euros and when you have the offer accepted, or you can actually think, well, rates are good at the moment, could they drop down? Elections this year, possibly, who knows? Let's get a rate secured while it's up at a pretty decent level. So again, decision's ultimately yours, but it's one of those where you can go either way, really.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for your question, Karen, and thanks for your answer, Danny. Just on in regards to the actual process, I know we said it's the more time, the early the better to speak to Smart Currency and just to understand your options and your and align you with the experts that can give you some guidance throughout your journey. What happens if, let's say, I was speaking with Smart Currency and then I decided, I no longer wanted to purchase property overseas and had no foreign exchange requirement? Would I still be obliged to use you? I mean, what was my commitment with Smart Currency Exchange at that stage?
So, I mean, when you've just got an account set up, the accounts are totally free of any cost or commitment. So it's very well worth doing, at an early stage. Of course, if you have an agreement to buy currency, then it's a different story. But if you've actually just set up the account, you're just speaking to us, as I say, accounts are totally free of cost or commitment. So, if you decide against it, we can just cancel off your inquiry. Maybe you might even come back to us in the future when you pick things up again. But that's, it's not a problem at all. And as I say, there's no cost or commitment at the account opening stage.
Okay. All right. Perfect. All right. Thanks, Danny. So we've gone over time. I know there's some questions in there that we haven't got round to. And as I mentioned, I'll pass them across to Danny and his team to follow up with. But yeah, thank you so much, Danny, for your time today, for your knowledge and answering the questions that have been put forward. I really appreciate all that you have done, but also all that you will do, hopefully, for people that are listening in live now and also on demand after this session. As Danny mentioned, it's not the most glamorous part of the buying process. It's a part of the process that people probably leave very last minute. And then your risk will go up when you're talking about huge sums of money. It can cost you potentially thousands of pounds. So I really would advise speaking to Smart Currency or any FX broker that you can, just to get that guidance and to ensure that you are protected when you're making your journeys overseas. What we'll do, we'll post this live on demand after, so please feel free to log in and access this and send this to any friends or family that you may have and that may find this useful. Before we finish, we'd also like you to leave a review on Trustpilot if you found this webinar helpful. And if there's anything else that your overseas home or our team can help with, please don't hesitate to get in touch. We can also help with a world of other expertise and experts for your whole journeys of buying property overseas. So thanks everyone listening in. Thank you, Danny, and happy property hunting.
Just to butt in there, so if anyone wants to email across any questions that didn't get answered, then the email's on that tab. So feel free to send an email there if anyone wants to get in touch.
Perfect. Yeah, nice one. All right, cheers, Danny. Well, thanks everyone for listening in, and we'll hopefully hear from you all soon.
Thank you.